We have Cameron Hill beside me. Cameron, good morning.
Good morning.
And a very special guest, co-host, Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent. Dan, good morning.
Thanks for that intro, Shane.
There's only one title for it, really.
Special, yeah.
I mean, we could have put Irish Independent maybe under your name, but we'll just go special guest, co-host.
Listen, I'm happy to work with it. Yeah,
it works. Louth's finest. Where we've got Louth. I always I know it's Mayo.
Yeah. But say Mayo then.
It's just the accent puts me off, Dan, you see.
Listen, I'm used to that myself, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
But there's a twang, there's a
little bit. I think if you're northeast, as you are yourself, you sort of recognise you recognise it a little bit.
Yes.
You can recognise a little bit of twang, but to most people, you've probably sold out.
It's RD you're from.
Yeah.
See, yeah.
Don't have the RD accent in the sort of the purest sense of the word.
RD's not as strong as Dundalk, though, is it?
It depends. Yeah, depends. Ardee, Dundalk and Drogheda, like you've three different accents there in a very small radius.
Drogheda,
trying to explain this to people. You know, it's like, how can this small county produce so many different ways to work the English language?
It's true.
It can happen.
Yeah, because there's lads there in South Monaghan in a scheme very close to the Louth border, and it just meshes into one. The accent is so similar.
My dad's from Louth, and he doesn't have a very strong accent, but that's my mum always says that if he did, she wouldn't have married him.
Right. Well, what part of Louth?
Dunleer.
Oh God, that's the fourth part of the county.
Just off the motorway.
That's the lesser spoken part of Louth. Yeah. Dunleer. God,
but they're not showing off.
Well, Rob Carney's from Louth, and Dave Carney.
That's it.
And I mean, I think those lads maybe lost their accent a little bit along the way.
Went schooled in Louth, were they?
They weren't? No. Oh, sure, of course. Yeah, the rugby. That's fair enough. No, we'll not have it. I was distracted yesterday evening, lads. I usually be sending texts back and forth, production texts, and kind of getting involved in the production of the show.
Much more involved, usually. I
sat in a dark room for 3.5 hours, basically. Oppenheimer. In the cinema last night, IMAX. What experience, by the way. Like the biggest screen. I think it's the biggest screen in the country there in Purnell Street, in Cineworld. But it was an unbelievable film. I saw Barbie last week, so Dan is out of the loop here, Cameron. This is it's very pop culture.
Yeah,
it's very current. It's very of the time. It's very in.
Yeah, my brothers went and did Barbenheimer.
Did they one after the other?
One after the other. So they went and my brother wore a purple suit with a pink tie, and went to Oppenheimer first, then went for pints, then went to Barbie.
Oppenheimer first,
and then Barbie as a palate cleanser.
Yeah, so you can do that a bit tipsy.
Yeah, he was delighted the way it turned out. He really enjoyed Oppenheimer, and he said he really enjoyed Barbie, but then he wasn't of sound mind at that point, so of course I can't for sure.
Do you know what?
I genuinely have no idea. Like, I mean, I see a lot of references to Oppenheimer, and like you just realise you've completely lost touch with, like, I mean, I've missed that whole strand of society that go for like a movie double header with points in between.
Yes,
I've just lost touch with like how people recreationally choose to spend their time.
But you're watching different sorts of things at home.
Well, it's not even that. Well, I mean, obviously Paw Patrol,
of course.
Yeah, I can speak about that if you want. I mean, plot wise, not 3.5 hours, shorter episodes, maybe repetitive, but like I genuinely have no idea what Oppenheimer is about.
So the reason these two films have become culturally linked,
I want to explain it to me here,
is because they're released on the same day by chance, and they are so unbelievably different. Well, I mean, you couldn't have picked two different themes, so people were like, this is hilarious. These two films are released on the same day, so they both benefited from each other releasing on the same day, because Barbie fans went to Oppenheimer fans went to Barbie. So J. Robert Oppenheimer was the father of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
That explains why some atomic bomb related social media content was coming up.
That would
there was an interview, I don't know if you saw that thing, was it This Is Your Life show from America, like 10 years or so later, where a Japanese person was introduced to one of the pilots.
Oh yes.
And now that's the context for
that's it.
And it was like they brought out the pilot who then who sort of in that awkward stilted style, meeting someone for the first time.
Oh wow, yeah.
Discussing how they felt on that day.
Paul Tibbets, I think, was the Enola Gay pilot. That was the plane that dropped it in Hiroshima. But like, the film is mad. It's 3 hours. It's just Cillian Murphy plays Robert Oppenheimer.
That's why he's popping up everywhere.
That's why he's popping up.
That makes sense.
Like
all these.
Not in Barbie, to be clear.
He's not in Barbie, but it's an all-star cast in Oppenheimer. You've got like Matt Damon. You've got Emily Blunt. Who else you have? You've got
RBJ,
Robert Downey Jr.
RDJ.
Yeah, you've got not Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
No, different.
Rami Malek, great show.
Malek is in it.
There's some unbelievable actors in it. Who else is in it? No. Producer trying to catch me out. He says Brad Pitt, but Brad Pitt's not in it, so I'm not going to say his name.
You watched it last night, Shane.
I watched it last night.
Remember.
I know it was excellent. And then Barbie is totally different. It's like Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling shut your brain off time, but there are a lot of themes in it, like kind of important. You've seen it, haven't you?
Is the whole point that you have to showcase that you're a more rounded individual by watching both, and you can't watch one without the other. And if you just watched one,
yes,
then you're obviously conforming to some stereotype that you're just you're not open.
That's
you're basically not open to it. So you have to,
there was probably more men at Barbie than otherwise would have been. So, but I don't know if Barbie would have been a film that I otherwise would have went to, but I was like, I'm going to do both.
You're a modern man.
Modern man.
They've a point to prove by going to Barbie as well.
Maybe.
Whereas Paw Patrol the movie is the synthesis of those two ideas.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. But I'm into my history and stuff, so Oppenheimer I thoroughly enjoyed. It's, if you're into history, like, obviously,
I know, I probably will. I'll see it in 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, exactly, when it comes out on. But it's one of these, it's obviously about the atomic bomb, so this is not exactly a spoiler. There are some loud moments, and
some brilliant,
some sensory overload moments that I think would be best served on a massive IMAX screen.
Okay. I'd say it was intense.
It was very intense.
Yeah.
There's a moment in the middle. I won't spoil it, but it's like. It's very, very intense.
Someone farted.
You almost went into
vacuum.
That wasn't the intense moment, by the way.
When you nearly went into a Graham McDowell movie review there.
Yeah.
I feel like Graham McDowell should be reviewing Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Many moments to choose from. Well, his favourite movies, of course, would be Gladiator and Shawshank Redemption, but we won't go down that path. I won't be at Oppenheimer tonight. A lot of people in Dublin won't be at Oppenheimer tonight. This is the worst segue of all time, but the Irish team are homecoming tonight instead. That's what we're all going to be at.
Coming home even.
Coming home.
A team would probably feel like spending 3.5 hours in a dark room.
Is it going to be an awkward homecoming because of the whole Vera Pauw, Katie McCabe thing? Like, is that?
Well, I don't know what they've got planned for it. I haven't followed it, and I mean, generally, these homecomings are like terrible. Really, but like a great occasion for people to go and see them, and it's about like the kids and having them out on stage. But like, I'm thinking of previous ones with Joe Duffy sort of interviewing people sort of after the World Cup 2002, and it's all very stilted. So like, I don't know what they've got planned for it. But yeah, I think it is probably going to be a lot of body language reading and watching. And I suppose, I don't know how it was ever going to be any other way, given things that happened in a very high profile way the other day.
It's going to be, I'm just looking up the details of the homecoming, so 6:30 this evening on O'Connell Street, just in front of the GPO. Entertainment, you've got Block Rock and Beats DJ Dick Pierce from upstairs, Dave Murray is the MC from Today FM. Beckett Bridge will have a special Koi gig message this evening as well. It doesn't really say exactly what else is involved, but people want to go down, they can, and observe body language and try and it's all a bit strange, isn't it, the contract situation with Vera Pauw. It's like, in a footballing sense, I don't think anyone would disagree that she probably deserves one, but there is the distraction of all the accusations from the Athletic piece, and I mean, there's her relationship with the players. We don't know exactly how she gets on with some of the squad, but clearly there was a little bit of tetchiness between herself and her captain.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing I would say about the modern FAI is that they actually do tend to work quite slowly on contracts as well. Now, it might work out for them here in the sense of, is it possibly the case that with all the water that's gone under the bridge in the last couple of weeks, that suddenly you may decide to go a different way, and maybe like the fact that the euphoria of qualification didn't convince them to throw out the contract, then clearly there's reservations. But it is just worth stressing that point. Like, even when Stephen Kenny's new contract was agreed, it was months before it was actually, or it was agreed that he would stay. It was months before it was signed and done. Jim Crawford, #21 manager, was left in limbo for ages. It was extremely bizarre, and there was never any doubt about him staying on. So they don't necessarily speed through these things in contrast to the FAI's past, where they would sort of chuck them out, after a good night. So I think it's clear, though, from reading the reports and listening to the reports of the people who were over there on the ground over the tournament, I suppose the mood music all seems to be going in a particular way, and they wouldn't be taking a stab at that. There's clearly the vibe around the place would reflect that maybe you've reached this natural end, and I suppose when things like people will say now, oh well, this whole thing on Monday is it's overblown, you know, it's completely, and I understand the nature of people to say that people are trying to create a story from nothing, but you step back from it and like it is highly unusual.
Yeah.
You have your most high profile player at a time when you're trying to like pretty build on this and grow the game, and you're going to have Kate McCabe front and centre, and if you have a manager saying things in a press conference that are sort of escalating a situation, then you have the player doing something on social media, maybe in the forum of a sort of a happy clappy homecoming. Everything is put to the side, and there's sort of, you know, great you know, sort of gestures and cheers and everything, and that's absolutely fine. But that's unusual. There's no doubt that's unusual.
The questioning around Paro before she left was unusual too. Like the question around, are you going to the homecoming, was very strange, right?
Yeah. I
mean, Kathleen pointed it out herself, and they spoke about it on the World Cup show, that it was there must be something else there, because why would you ask that? I'm the manager, of course I'm going. There's just this cloud of mystery and intrigue around all this, I think.
Well, since the moment they qualified and that song became that they sang in the dressing room became a big issue, there just seems to be something following this team around. Like, you're never more than 5 minutes away from another controversy, and I'm not saying it's the team's fault whatsoever, it's just there always seems to be something. And maybe heading into a big tournament, people lean in more to these storylines, and I understand that, and maybe we wouldn't be making a big deal out of Katie McCabe asking for a substitution. Like maybe Vera Pauw naming the player, naming Sinead Farrelly was a bit
There's a lot
strange.
of yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I've sat through a lot of press conferences over the years where a player is asked about, do you want your manager to stay on? And even if they maybe don't want them to stay on, they will come out and say, of course.
What are they going to say?
We always say that. What are they going to say? And like, it's actually been one of the things that has probably worked even, I think, for Stephen Kenny at times, has been the real emphatic nature of the player support, where they've gone that bit further than given the platitude. And actually, like, you know, Matt Doherty and people going a bit further and saying, no, the preparations, everything was very good. And in that context, I do find the very non-committal answers of all the players to be kind of interesting. Like, it's amazing to me that at some point, you know, no player has felt the need to say, well, of course, we'd love to continue the work we're doing with Vera, you know, and qualify for the next tournament. It's the easiest thing in the world to say.
Yeah.
In fact, if someone says it, we sort of forget they've said it 2 minutes later, and you just go, yeah, whatever. Like, there's press conference talk, but not one player has really gone that way.
We wouldn't forget them saying it if they said it now. Now we'd be like, well, Jesus, right, that's a backing.
And like, it's hardly, is it a PR strategy? Has someone given them briefing notes to say this is what you say in response to this? I don't know, but like, it's to me, you know, at times it can all seem very benign, and again, people are trying to find a story that isn't there. But like, you step back from that stuff and you look at the interactions and how people generally interact in that sort of football setting, and you see things there that are all forming a sort of a strange pattern, which makes you think there's something lingering behind it.
There's a YouTube comment in from Shane. Feels harsh. Why are we having a homecoming for a team that finished bottom of the group? The men's team didn't get one after Euro 2012, and rightly so.
Yeah, it's their first time, I think. I don't have an issue with it. I think if they get to the next Euros and you know, exit in the groups, I don't think there should be one. But I think, like, to reflect, you know, the historic nature of this, I don't particularly have a problem with it. I think the nature of even how things happened last October, you know, you could argue like they didn't necessarily get that moment. You know, I know there was people greeting them at the airport and stuff like that, but I don't have a mad problem with it. But obviously, again, yeah, I think it's because you only have the first time once, and I think that's probably the argument for it. Yeah,
and I don't think it's that grim. Like, I saw a video yesterday of the Kerry homecoming at the weekend, where they'd arranged, obviously in Killarney and Tralee, the players coming off the bus, and it was a bit like a wake. Yeah. You know, like Kerry obviously in a final expecting to win, hoping to win, So I don't think the Irish homecoming this evening is going to be quite like that. As you said, it is a World Cup. It's a moment to celebrate.
Yeah, conspicuously empty plinth.
It would be. Yeah.
On which the World Cup would have sat.
Yes. Yeah. Just sitting there. So it'll be strange, but as you say, it's a first World Cup. I think it's fair enough. Keep the comments coming in. Edward Freeman says English managers treated awfully by the English press down the years. Stephen Kenny and now Vera Pauw suffering the same stick and disrespect from journalists. Some of the questions of the World Cup were a joke. You have to ask these questions at the end of the day.
I didn't hear any questions to me that struck me as unreasonable.
No,
and also I will say that Vera Pauw very much controls the tone of her press conferences. It's actually something she's very good at. She's a very good communicator in that setting. Look, I mean, this just sounds self-serving. It's like, oh, here's a member of the media saying the media aren't asking bad questions. But I don't, there have been times, maybe at times even in the Kenny stuff where I wouldn't have been mad maybe on aspects of things. But I think a lot of the tougher questions that have been asked of Vera Pauw should have been asked at various times. I mean, during this World Cup, there has been some mad things happening. The Colombia game and what happened before that, and that being called off and injuries, and again, there was a high profile investigation that she actually was sort of keen to happen, I suppose, in a way. So I think you have to go there.
Someone else has commented as well saying, this is Strawberry Boba. Good morning, Strawberry. Where's Shane's Dublin jersey? Now that he lives in Dublin, he must support them now, according to his own logic. Or is this one-way logic? Strawberry, if you were listening to me yesterday, this is all over. So there was a video, we were talking about it yesterday, in Ashburn, at the G8 club in Ashburn, in the bar. We're all watching. They had a bit of a party to watch the All-Ireland final. Similar party, I'm told, happened for the Talton Cup final with Meath taking part. But this All-Ireland watch party, Dublin versus Kerry in the Ashburn County Meath G8 club, was plastered with Dublin jerseys. And so I'm not saying that Dublin people who have moved to Ashburn to live, fair enough, commuter belt, a little bit cheaper than Dublin City. I'm not saying that they should now be Meath fans. What I'm saying is it's an organised event in the G8 club, and there's not a Meath jersey. Not that they should be wearing Meath jerseys, but I'd imagine Meath people wanted Kerry to win at the weekend. I'm not saying that because I live in... We're not all Dublin fans now that we live in Dublin. That's fair enough. I'm not going to tell people who to support. I just think it was a funny one. I think it'd be like... what's the equivalent in Mayo?
Ballahadreen.
Ballahadreen, basically.
They were all wearing Roscommon jerseys.
I mean... It's similar lines.
Yeah, but it's tough when you see, I think I've had this before. There's a couple of footballers who are from Ashburn direction, and you sort of you refer to them as the Meath native or something, and it's
feels wrong.
It's not. Well, where would you say, where are the allegiances of Nathan Collins and Evan Ferguson? They're actually routinely mistakenly referred to as Dubliners.
Dublin people. Yeah.
But actually,
Evans
they're both Kildare, Kildare and Meath.
Yeah.
And Nathan, Mark Travers is another one. He is more Kildare, but this generally tends to happen. You'll see a lot of references to Nathan Collins, Dubliner. But I sort of asked, their league slip, and they sort of straddle both sides, And it's
the train goes out there. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
it's the accents. I think people get confused with the accents. Should we start referring to footballers as from the Pale? Footballer from the age 24 from the Pale.
It's not a historic mess to untangle there. I think
could be controversial. Could prove controversial. Shifty lad, morning. Shifty lad. He says, did Vera's Dutch demeanour come across as tough for the players? Straight talking, should be admired. Yeah, maybe that, and it's a personality thing. I'm not necessarily saying it's just her nationality, but it's her personality, generally speaking. She is blunt in press conferences. Tony O'Donoghue asked her a question the other day about the contract situation, and she replied with one word and left it at that. And even the way she said, Katie McCabe's not the manager I am, or not the coach I am. She didn't have to say that. That was proffered by herself.
Yeah. So
there are maybe just little things from a press conference that just that's just Vera. Do you know if this was Stephen Kenny mightn't maybe go as far sometimes in press conferences, although sometimes he wants to get his point across and he'll speak for 4, 5, 6 minutes. And
but if your player was sort of remonstrating him to make substitutions, it would become a massive story. If that was the case, and it would be portrayed in a particular way. So yeah, I think some people, there will be people out there who like that bluntness from, and their personality will naturally lean towards that. They like that type of management, and then there obviously the conflicting view will be. I suppose sometimes you might have with these managers who can be quite intense and blunt, and this extends to all codes, and you can think of like the strong characters that go that further. Sometimes there can be a shelf life to that.
Yes.
That the voice is very effective and achieves a goal, but do you eventually reach a point where maybe that loses its effectiveness? And sometimes, like, you know, it wouldn't be the first international team that just a length of time away for a major tournament. It's very different to anything you do during a qualifying campaign. You might be together for 10 days. That was a big thing with Trapp in Ireland in the Euro 2012. Like the longest they'd been together prior to that was probably maybe 8 days, 10 days in a training camp, and all of a sudden it's 5 weeks, and by the end of it was sort of done. Yeah. But the contract was already signed, and the thing sort of limped along for another year.
We've already mentioned Evan Ferguson's name, but John O'Leary says in the YouTube comments, any concerns that Evan Ferguson hasn't started a pre-season game for Brighton with Welbeck and Joao Pedro starting ahead of him?
No, I wouldn't. Like, I think with Ferguson, it's the second season though. Like, it's first full season, really. You know, like he only broke in halfway through last season, so I wouldn't get carried away with it. I think, like, you know, the management may look to do things with a player in a particular way to sort of. I think that even last year they were quite good. Like, he wasn't playing every game. They took him out of the firing line at times, and they rotated him. But it's true. Like, I think with Evan Ferguson, there's such an obsessive focus on him now. That, like, if he doesn't start a game, it'll prompt a crisis, when, like, he's way ahead of every average and every sort of metric of where someone would be. I wouldn't be too concerned, but I mean, it was mentioned to me by someone the other day, alright, that was the case, but you just don't know where people are at in pre-season. There could be, like, he had a sort of an injury interrupted still, like, second half of last season. You know, with everything that happened, he still had a couple of injuries, and they might just be monitoring that.
On Irish football, Shamrock Rovers and Ferencváros, this is going to be an exit from Europe for Shamrock Rovers, let's be honest.
There's no need to dwell on that one too much.
But we could dwell on the money. Like, so they made over 3.5 million in UEFA money last year. This is going to be 810,000 euro. Like, that's a bit of a blow. I'm not saying in budgets they'll have planned necessarily for another 3.5 million, but it's certainly it will have financial implications for the club, you'd imagine.
Well, I don't know it's so much the implications, like, as in, you know, it's really worrying. It's just more the case of stressing they can't afford too many years like this one, I would think. I mean, like, the accounts will show, like, they're not a club that's been, say, turning profits in recent years, but they've had certain things that have happened, like the qualification, like Gavin Bazunu, that have given them, like, injections, and, you know, they won't have budgeted, I don't believe, for more than that. But at the same time, there would have been a realistic expectation that with that Champions route that they go into, it's not anticipated that you lose your first game, you lose your second game, and you're out. Generally, there's quite a soft landing when you lose your first Champions League game and you play a team you should beat. And they ended up playing Ferencváros, which is unlucky. I mean, I should mention, like, Ferencváros lost to the team from the Faroe Islands, Klaksvik. When you were in your 3.5 hour sort of dark place last night, I was in my own place following, like, you know, the scores around Europe. So Klaksvik, the champions of the Faroe Islands, they've dumped out Hungary's champions, Ferencváros, and they beat the Swedish champions on penalties last night. So now they're now guaranteed group stage football.
Right.
Like, there's a broader debate about, like, European results now, and it's mad how people will just look at the country name and brackets after a team and, like, draw assumptions. And you now have a situation where people would say, Rovers, where our clubs are miles off, but actually a club from the Faroes have now won 2 Champions League ties and are guaranteed at least Conference League groups. Now, maybe that embarrasses you in some ways, because it says, well, hang on, if they can do it, why can't we? Or it just reflects that it's cup football, it's knockout football, and crazy things can happen, and not every year should be the subject for a massive state of the nation debate about where things are. But Rovers have been very disappointing, and their team is old, and they're missing their most important players at the worst time, like Jack Byrne, Neil Farrugia, all the pace of the team, the main creative players of the team, but they have been poor. And while, you know, they can justify, they can sort of cope, I think, with 1 year like this, their whole plan is about getting into Europe every year and then getting through a couple of rounds. and it's not always going to be that 3 million, but it definitely will be hoping to make way more than 800 grand, and that's why there will be people nervous behind the scenes, no doubt. Yeah.
Jack Byrne going to stay by the sound of it? Well, certainly there'll be no, as Stephen Bradley said, no quick fire exit anyway because of the European exit, but
not sure when he's going to be back. That's the problem.
He's seen a knee specialist at the minute.
So Shamrock Rovers were playing Derry in the second game after the break, and it was a big night for him. Looked like that's a big step towards regaining the league. And with 10 minutes to go, in the last 10 minutes Jack Byrne got a knee injury and Neil Ferrugia got a hamstring injury, and it may well be that 10 minutes has sort of derailed their season. A concern.
Derry City can do it.
Derry and the Dock are still alive. Derry are 2-1 up going to Finland against the Finnish league leaders. I watched that game last week. They were decent, Derry. They've got a lot of their better players back. They've got a sort of a core of players there who would have been at Dundalk and they're a strong sort of European campaigns, and they're talented footballers who can keep the ball. They've got actually a good balance for Europe, maybe even a better balance than Rovers in some ways, that they have they play with wingers, and I think if you're going away from home, they can absorb some pressure, but they can break quickly. So I'd give them a chance. Then Dundalk are chasing 2-goal deficit against a team from Iceland. They should not have lost that game by 2 goals last week. They conceded all 3 shots on target, and they had 65% possession. But I just fear that they've left themselves with a little bit too big of a mountain to climb. I think if they were 3-2 down, I'd be pretty confident they go through tonight. I think 3-1. I'm not sure if they're good enough defensively to get it done, but I'm heading to that game and I certainly expect something to happen. I don't expect it to be routine. But maybe. And look, there you go. If 2 teams lose to Icelandic teams in 1 year, you definitely are entitled to look and go, well, hang on, what are they doing? Like that Faroese team are part-time. Like what they're doing is absolutely off the charts. So it's one of these things that people are going to pick up on, I think, around the world. The story of Klaksvik, because the Dog played them to get into the group stages in 2020 during COVID, and people said, the Dog so lucky to end up playing this team from the Faroes, but they've come back and they've they're doing extraordinary things, and that should probably inspire people and think, well, hang on, if these things can be done,
especially with part-time players. If they're doing that with those resources, anything can be done. Cian Rose says Pedro will be a serious threat to Evans' spot. Very good player. Can see Ferguson going to Spurs if Kane leaves.
Don't say that.
Don't let that happen. Tommy says if Roy Keane was giving the same answers as Vera, we would all think it's hilarious and be loving every minute of it. Again, Roy Keane's a pundit, not the manager. It's true, yeah. Yeah, it's fair. Kevin Power, lads, as someone whose family comes from 1 kilometre from the Cork-Kerry border on the Cork side, brackets, thank God, if you were caught wearing Kerry jersey, you'd be finished. No excuses for those Meath lads. I think that's the point. They're maybe not Meath lads. They're probably Dubs in Meath. They don't identify as it's the kids I'm concerned about. Do you know, there's kids there with Dublin jerseys on. Can someone please think of the children who I'm making assumptions here, potentially play football for Ashburn and their parents are Dubs, or one parent is a Dub, and maybe that allows them to support Dublin on that day. But if you're a little kid and you're growing up in Ashburn, I want you to hate Dublin. I'm not calling for Dublin hate here, but I mean, it's nice to have a little bit of county rivalry. Do you know, we have it with Tyrone. John Egan was wearing a Kerry jersey the other day. Yes, his father, a Kerry legend. Yes, yeah. But he grew up in Cork. Where was the disdain for John Egan? There's an asterisk over that. If your father was a legend of that. I see. Well, how do you? Maybe some of these Ashburn parents have been great members of the Dublin community, just in a different sphere. Yes. So if it's true sport, you're entitled to in sport, it's fine, but if just in life, I'm not going to lie, I don't care that much. Yeah. You've just given a take, Shane, and now you're just I've made a mistake here. You've got me there. Yeah. So not invested, actually. As it turns out. Celtic says half of Ashburn comes from Finglas, though. I'm not calling for Dublin hate, but ... Yeah, I know. I'm not calling for Dublin hate. I just think a little bit of county rivalry wouldn't go amiss. Can we write a colloquial rule as to how far you can be out of Dublin and still be a Dublin supporter? If Ashburn is at the end of a Dublin bus line, are they technically okay? If Dublin bus goes there, it could be one way of looking at it. I think it does go there, doesn't it? It does go to Ashburn. Couple of transfers, Connolly and Horgan in the championship. Yeah, well, Darrell Horgan's come back to Dundalk, having been at Wickham and others, and that is a great signing for them. He's 17 caps for Ireland. He last played 2 years ago, so he's not 35. He's 30, Darrell Horgan. So I just think I think probably just to have a player of that quality in a team that's not necessarily
maybe a title challenge and one at the moment. I think that's just good, just to spread the talent around a bit. So that's great. Like, you know, there's a real buzz around Dundalk, even though he's not eligible for the European game tonight. They'd be playing Club Bruges if they were to get through, and I think he'd be involved. And it's great to see him. Aaron Connolly, another Galwegian. I'm not sure about Aaron Connolly. I mean, when you think about Aaron Connolly being the sort of the 2 goals against Spurs, Brighton's sort of next Irish superstar, and the fact that him leaving the club on a permanent basis is something that's a bit of a footnote. Like, you know, it's not like a back page story. It's not sort of something that people are actively like really discussing. Like, it's a point of interest. But you look at it another way, it's like, well, that's Aaron Connolly leaving a Premier League club. Will he get back there? Will Aaron Connolly play in the Premier League again?
Yeah,
it's a debate point. I mean, he hasn't played in Ireland for over a year. So I don't know. Like, I mean, the reports when he went to Hull at the start of earlier this year, where that even in training wise and stuff, he was applying himself quite well, and that's good, because there have been concerns about maybe just his application, and then he got injured. So it's up to him. He'll respond from this, and the shape of his career in the next 5 years will be dictated by what happens. In fact, the shape of the rest of his career will be dictated by this season with Hull. Yeah,
100%. We'll have loads more between now and 10 o'clock as well. Craig Ray standing by to talk South African rugby. They'll be in our group in the World Cup, of course. Sarah O'Donovan to preview the Camogie final this weekend, 8:25 a.m. That's Cork versus Waterford this weekend. So we get the Cork side of things, the non-biased side of things from Sarah, to be fair, as per usual. Sports news around 8:45 with John, who's back in studio, and also in studio 8:55 special treat. Conor McManus will join myself and Dan in here, and then at 9:30 we'll play you the World Cup show. Before we get to the rugby, lads, I guess a little talking point of the rugby. And Cameron, you may or may not have strong feelings on this. Jersey numbers or names on the back of rugby jerseys. Yeah, it's not a done thing at the moment.
No, so this is off the back of the Irish rugby team announcing that they will have the names on the back of their jerseys for these warm-up games. It remains to be seen whether they'll be on the back of the jerseys for the World Cup.
Do most teams do it for the World Cup?
No, this is a very new thing. England, Scotland, Wales, and I think Italy also do it at the moment. But at the World Cup would be a very new thing, and it's just something I cannot get behind at all. I think it's. Why? See, rugby is one of the last sports where the number is incredibly significant in terms of the symbolism of the players. So, you know, when you get a number 10 jersey for Ireland, let's say Jack Crowley gets the Italy jersey, the jersey for Italy this weekend. You're handing it down from the likes of Johnny Sexton, Ronan O'Gara, Ollie Campbell, all those stars. That 10 has significance, whereas if it has a name above it, I think it just devalues it slightly. And look, my brother was making the point that they have their names on the jerseys anyway because they're sewn in just at the hip there. Like every jersey is new for every game, but I just think the idea behind it is it just waters it down ever so slightly. Rugby, and look, I'm one of those, I'm not someone who's stuck in their old ways, but I think it's a case of reject modernity, embrace tradition. I like the symbolism around when someone takes the 13 jersey, you're like, that's Brian O'Driscoll's number, that was a jersey he imbued a lot of great moments with, or imbued with a lot of great moments. And I'm not a fan of that. I really don't like it. I think it's strange. I think it'll also kill off the novelty jersey market, which is terrible. But yeah, I'm not a fan of it at all.
I'm all for it.
Is the squad numbers for a tournament then? Are you saying it's going to be like for the?
I presume they'll get it's in the World Cup. They'll get game by game squad numbers.
Game by game squad numbers. So your 15's your fullback. That's just
but so they're not going to have different numbers during the tournament.
No.
Game by game.
Whereas in football you do that for the World Cup.
If you're doing that, go whole hog and just have 26 Crowley for the entire tournament.
That would make more sense. Right?
Way more sense.
Yeah, I guess.
Seems inefficient to be just putting names on, changing it for every game.
Yeah,
it's just reckless spending.
It is,
exactly,
and it's not like these are unrecognisable players for commentators. You know, it's not that sort of thing.
And players change from game to game. Like Henshaw could play 12 one week and 13 the next. It's not like 12's his number now.
Yeah,
so fair. I can't get behind this. But you know, I am looking forward to. This is the hill I'm going to die on.
Cameron
Does it
Hill
make
to
it
die on.
angrier than Ashburn people? Like, I mean, is this
Yeah.
On
the scale of outrage? Where do we put names on rugby shirts versus dubs in Meath?
Yeah, possibly above.
Although Fergus Keogh's gotten in touch saying he's from North East Paris and still a Dublin supporter, is that okay? And it's not okay. You should be Paris Gales and France GAA.
Fair enough.
That's
Niall says no names on rugby jerseys. No, not even practically. Crowley would have had to start in 22 jersey versus Australia last year. When Sexton injury, I don't know. It's and then Flying Hellfish says they get new jerseys for every game, lads.
That's
Anyway,
yeah.
Well, look,
I've addressed that point.
I for one like it. But Cameron, I appreciate your views and thoughts. Thanks for coming in. The Cameron Hill to die on this morning.
Always a pleasure.